Today, you're about to uncover the full story of the Bible. You'll journey through the Old and New Testaments, from the dawn of creation to the final revelation. Get ready for a life-changing experience. On this profound journey, every chapter of the Bible will come alive before your eyes. The promise is clear, the invitation stands. Dive in and let the Bible reshape your life. It all started in the very beginning, before time itself, when only God existed in the infinite void. God had no beginning. He has always been. He is without origin. He is the origin of all things. He was not made. He is the maker. Then, in a flash, a brilliant light pierced through the void. "Let there be light," a powerful voice commanded, and the universe exploded with radiant brilliance. The heavens expanded, and the earth emerged, covered in vast seas and empty landscapes. God observed his creation, and in the stillness planned the next step. "Let us make man in our image, with care. He shaped from the dust a being in his likeness." Adam, he declared, and the man opened his eyes, seeing a world fresh with life, yet something was missing. God noticed the loneliness in Adam's gaze and, with determination, decided it is not good for man to be alone. While Adam slept, God took a part of him and crafted Eve. Upon waking and seeing her, Adam was overcome with astonishment. "Flesh of my flesh," he exclaimed, unable to look away. Eve gazed back with a mixture of curiosity and wonder, her eyes reflecting the vast, unexplored world around them. Yet, in the Garden of Eden, not everything was serene. In the shadows, a cunning figure lurked. The serpent, with a malicious grin, slithered up to Eve. "Did God really say you shouldn't eat from any tree in the garden?" it whispered, sowing doubt. Eve hesitated but answered, "We may eat the fruit of all the trees, except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You will not die." The serpent's voice grew more intense, filled with temptation. "Rather, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." The desire to know the forbiddance ignited in Eve's heart. She took the fruit and ate, offering it to Adam, who without hesitation did the same. Suddenly, they realized their nakedness and felt shame for the first time. The garden transformed, skies darkened, thunder roared, and God appeared, his face a blend of pain and fury. "What have you done, Adam?" His voice echoed like a hammer. Trembling, Adam pointed to Eve. "The woman you gave me offered me the fruit, and I ate." Eve, with tears in her eyes, whispered, "The serpent deceived me." The verdict was swift and devastating. "Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat from it all the days of your life," declared God, and to Eve, "I will greatly multiply your pain in childbirth. In pain you shall bring forth children." The serpent was condemned to crawl on its belly and eat dust. The harmony of Eden was shattered forever. Adam and Eve, expelled from paradise, faced a harsh and unknown world. As they walked away, the garden slowly disappeared from view, and the first sunset outside Eden blazed a deep red. The creation of the universe, filled with both beauty and sorrow, marked the beginning of an eternal story of struggle, redemption, and hope. In the barren plains east of Eden, Adam and Eve had two sons, Cain and Abel. Cain, the firstborn, worked hard under the scorching sun, clearing the land. Abel, his younger brother, tended his flock across the meadows, his face radiating a peace that Cain couldn't understand. One day, Cain shouted, "Abel, God accepts your offerings, but not mine. What do you have that I don't?" Abel, gently stroking a lamb, calmly replied, "It's the heart, brother. God looks at the heart." Abel's words echoed in Cain's mind, stirring a dark envy. Over time, that jealousy grew like a shadow in his soul. One night, under the stars, Cain made a fateful decision. "Come with me to the field tomorrow," he said to Abel, his intentions hidden behind cold eyes. At dawn, they met in the fields. Tension filled the air. "Why does God favor you and not me?" Cain asked, his voice laced with bitterness. "It's about our faith, Cain. God desires a sincere heart," Abel explained, unaware of the danger looming. Suddenly, the peaceful morning shattered. Cain, holding a stone, struck Abel on the head. Abel fell, surprise and pain in his eyes. Cain, my brother, he whispered before his voice faded forever. The earth, once a stage for life, now bore witness to the first act of violence. Abel's blood soaked into the ground, crying out for justice. Cain, trembling, stared at his blood-stained hands, horrified by what he had done. Suddenly, a powerful voice echoed in Cain's mind, commanding and omnipotent, "Where is your brother Abel?" "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" Cain replied, his voice trembling with fear and guilt. God spoke again, this time with a stern tone, "Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. You are cursed and banished from the land that has swallowed your brother's blood." At that moment, Cain's fate was sealed. The earth, which once yielded fruit under his care, became barren. Cain wandered as an outcast, marked by his crime, forever burdened as the first murderer in history. The tragedy of Cain and Abel was etched into the human soul, a lasting reminder of envy's destructive power. As time passed, mankind grew corrupt. The wickedness of humanity filled the earth. God, watching in sorrow, decided to end the depravity. Yet one man, Noah, stood righteous amidst the darkness. God's voice thundered, "Noah, I will destroy all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence. Build an ark of cypress wood. Make rooms inside and out, and cover it with pitch." Without hesitation, Noah obeyed. His every hammer strike was a judgment on the world's corruption. His neighbors mocked him, jeering, "A boat on dry land. Noah, you're mad." "Judgment is coming," Noah replied with conviction. Months turned in 2 years, and at last the ark was ready. "Take your family and 2 of every kind of animal," God commanded. As the animals entered the ark, an ominous silence fell, and the doors shut, sealing the world's fate. The sky suddenly darkened, and the first drops of rain fell, quickly turning into a relentless downpour. At first, people were curious, but soon panic spread. Noah was right. They screamed, rushing to the ark and pounding desperately on its doors. "Let us in," they cried, but it was too late. The waters rose swiftly, engulfing cities and mountains. Inside the ark, Noah and his family listened to the chaotic sounds of divine judgment outside. Their hearts were filled with fear, but also with hope. "Why us, Father?" One of Noah's sons asked, his voice shaking, "Because we found favor in his eyes," Noah replied, his words heavy with gratitude and wonder. For 40 days and nights, the rain poured without stopping. The ark floated on an endless sea of destruction. The cries outside faded, leaving only the eerie sound of water and the creaking of wood. Finally, the flood waters receded, and the ark came to rest on Mount Ararat. Noah, trembling, opened a window and released a dove. On the 3rd try, the dove returned with an olive leaf. "The land is dry," Noah announced, his voice full of hope. God spoke once more, "Leave the ark, you and your family. Repopulate the earth and multiply." With tears of joy, Noah obeyed and built an altar to offer sacrifices to God. "I established my covenant with you," God said. "I will never again destroy all life by flood. I have set my rainbow in the clouds as a sign of my covenant with the earth." A brilliant rainbow arched across the sky, symbolizing God's eternal promise. Noah and his family, standing on the renewed earth, gazed toward the future with hope, knowing they had witnessed and survived the greatest judgment the world had ever seen. Through Noah's sons, humanity began anew, spreading across the earth and giving rise to many nations. United by one language, the people gathered on the vast plain of Shinar. "Let us build a city with a tower that reaches the heavens," declared Nimrod, their leader. "Let us make a name for ourselves so we are not scattered across the earth." The construction moved swiftly as bricks were stacked high and the tower soared toward the sky. "Make it higher." Nimrod commanded, "It must touch the heavens." But God watched from above and said, "Look, the people are united with one language. If they continue like this, nothing will be impossible for them." Suddenly, the sound of work stopped. A worker called for more bricks, but received an unintelligible reply. "What did you say?" he asked, confused, but was met with a flood of foreign words. "What is happening?" Nimrod shouted, trying to restore order, but the once unified people could no longer understand one another. Confusion spread rapidly, and friends stared at each other in bewilderment. "Nimrod, do something." They pleaded, but even his commands were lost in the chaos. "God has judged us," an elder cried out, trembling with fear. "We must scatter." The great tower was left abandoned, a monument to human ambition and divine intervention. Groups of people, now divided by language, began to drift apart. Entire families set off in different directions, searching for new lands where they could understand one another. Nimrod stood at the base of the tower, surveying the crumbling city he had envisioned. "This cannot be," he whispered, though he knew he had been defeated by a greater power. From above, God watched the scattering unfold. "So it shall be," he declared, his voice filled with both authority and sorrow. "Humanity will spread and fill the earth, but they will not forget the cost of their pride." The tower became a ruin, a lasting reminder of the day God confused their languages and scattered mankind across the globe. Later, God chose a family destined to bring forth the promised Messiah. One night, beneath the shining stars, a divine voice entered the life of Abraham, saying, "Leave your homeland and your father's house. Go to the land I will show you." Though the voice wasn't audible, it was more powerful than any storm. "I will make you into a great nation. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. Through you, all peoples on earth will be blessed." Abraham's heart raced as he answered, "Here I am, Lord, I will do your will." The next morning, he told his wife, Sarai, "We are leaving." Surprised, Sarai asked, "Where to?" "I don't know," Abraham replied with resolve. "The Lord will guide us." And so, without delay, Abraham, Sarai, their nephew Lot, and all their possessions set out on a journey into the UNKNOWN. The familiar lands were left behind as the desert stretched out before them. One night, while camping under the vast starry sky, God's voice spoke again, "To your offspring I will give this land." Abraham gazed across the expansive lands of Canaan, feeling the immense weight of the divine promise. However, the journey was filled with trials. From the lush plains of Canaan to the enigmatic lands of Egypt, Abraham faced numerous challenges. Yet, throughout these trials, God continually reaffirmed his promise. "Look toward the heavens and count the stars. If you can, so shall your offspring be." As the years passed, the wait for a child seemed endless. In her despair, Sarai began to doubt the promise and gave her servant Hagar to Abraham. From this union, Ishmael was born, destined to become the father of a great nation, the Arabs, who would later become the historic rivals of Israel. Still, God had not forgotten his covenant. In her old age, Sarai finally gave birth to Isaac, and joy filled their home. "God has brought me laughter," Sarah declared, her heart overflowing with happiness. "Everyone who hears about this will laugh with me." The call of Abraham was the beginning of a great nation. The promise extended not just to him but to his descendants, a lineage that would include kings, prophets, and eventually the Savior of the world. Isaac grew up and married Rebekah, with whom he had twins, Esau and Jacob. Esau became the ancestor of the Edomites, while Jacob fathered the Israelites. Jacob had 12 sons and 1 daughter. His second-to-last son, Joseph, was chosen to carry forward the family promise, which sparked jealousy among his brothers. In their envy, they sold Joseph into slavery in Egypt. But with God's guidance, Joseph rose from slavery to become the Pharaoh's right-hand man. When a devastating famine struck the region, his brothers journeyed to Egypt in search of food, unaware that the powerful governor they sought help from was the very brother they had once betrayed. "I'm Joseph," he finally revealed, tears streaming down his face. "The one you sold into Egypt, but do not fear, for God sent me ahead of you to preserve your lives." Overcome with emotion, Joseph, later known as Israel, chose to forgive his brothers and brought his entire family to Egypt, settling them in the fertile land of Goshen. Here, the Israelites thrived, beginning with just 70 people. Over time, their numbers swelled dramatically. But as the years passed, a new dynasty of pharaohs rose to power, and the Egyptian ruler grew wary. "This Israelite people have become too numerous and strong," the pharaoh muttered, distrustful. "If they join with our enemies, they could defeat us. We must act now." With a swift command, the pharaoh ordered, "Enslave them, force them to make bricks without rest. Let them build our cities under heavy labor." The once prosperous Israelites were thrust into brutal servitude. Overseers shouted relentlessly, "Faster!" as whips cracked through the air, striking flesh. The people of Israel found themselves in chains, their spirits crushed under the weight of slavery. During this dark time, a child named Moses was born. The Pharaoh, fearing the growing Israelite population, had decreed that all Hebrew male infants be killed. "Throw every baby boy into the Nile," the ruthless order echoed. Yet Moses' mother, with a heart full of sorrow, hid her son in a basket and set him afloat on the river. While bathing in the Nile, the Egyptian princess discovered the basket. "It's a Hebrew baby," she exclaimed, lifting the child gently. "I will call him Moses, for I drew him out of the water." Moses was raised in the royal palace, but he never forgot his true heritage. One fateful day, Moses witnessed an Egyptian overseer mercilessly beating a Hebrew slave. Fury welled up within him. "Stop," he shouted, striking the overseer and killing him in his rage. Realizing the danger, Moses fled into the desert to escape retribution. Meanwhile, years of oppression had worn the Israelites down. Exhausted and in despair, they cried out to God, "Save us, Lord, deliver us from this suffering," and God, hearing their cries, began to set his plan of deliverance in motion. In the desert, Moses noticed a bush burning, yet it was not consumed by the flames. Cautiously, he approached it. "Moses, Moses," called out the voice of God from the fire. "Here I am," Moses replied, falling to his knees in awe. The voice from the bush spoke again. "I have seen the suffering of my people in Egypt. I will send you to Pharaoh to lead them out of bondage. Who am I to go to Pharaoh?" Moses asked, his voice trembling with uncertainty. "I will be with you," God reassured him. "You will lead the Israelites to a promised land, a land flowing with milk and honey." With God's command heavy on his heart, Moses returned to Egypt and stood before the Pharaoh with newfound courage. "Let my people go," he demanded, his voice echoing through the palace halls. Pharaoh's cold eyes narrowed. "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice? I will not let Israel go." And so the plagues began. The waters of the Nile turned to blood, fish died, and the land was filled with a foul stench. Frogs swarmed the land, followed by flies and lice, causing chaos in every household. "Ask your God to stop this." Pharaoh pleaded, overwhelmed by the destruction, but each time the plague subsided, Pharaoh's heart hardened once more. "There will be one final plague," Moses warned, "the death of the firstborn." In the dead of night, the angel of death passed through Egypt. Wails of grief echoed throughout the land as parents awoke to find their firstborns gone. "Go." Pharaoh finally shouted, his voice breaking with anguish, "Take your people and leave this place." After 400 years of oppression, the Israelites, about 600,000 men, along with women and children, set out under Moses' leadership. The journey led them toward the Red Sea, but Pharaoh, his grief turning to rage, changed his mind. "Send my army after them," he commanded, and the war chariots thundered across the desert, closing in on the Israelites. As they reached the edge of the Red Sea, panic spread among the people. "Did you bring us here to die, Moses?" They cried, fear gripping their hearts. "Trust in the Lord," Moses answered, raising his staff over the waters. Instantly, the sea parted, with towering walls of water on either side, and a dry path emerged in the middle, forward. Moses commanded, and the people hurried across the seabed while the Egyptian army closed in swiftly behind them. As soon as the Israelites reached the other side, Moses extended his hand once more, and the waters surged back, crashing down upon the Egyptian army. Burying them beneath the torrent of divine judgment, now free from their oppressors, the people erupted in celebration, singing and dancing with joy. "The Lord is my strength and my song," they sang. "He has become my salvation." Their journey through the desert began, but it was not without challenges. Water was scarce, and hunger soon gnawed at them. "Why did you bring us out of Egypt only to die here in the wilderness?" They complained bitterly. Moses, turning to God in desperation, witnessed miracles. Water flowed from a rock, and each morning, manna, the bread of heaven, covered the ground like dew. At Mount Sinai, God spoke from a cloud of glory, delivering his law to the people. "I am the Lord your God," he declared. "You shall have no other gods before me." The people, trembling with reverence, agreed to the covenant. Yet, temptation soon followed. While Moses was on the mountain, the people crafted a golden calf. "These are your gods, O Israel," they shouted, bowing before the idol. God's wrath burned hot, but Moses interceded on behalf of the people. "Forgive their sin, Lord," he pleaded. "And if not, blot me out of the book you have written." Mercy triumphed, and the journey continued. Years of wandering in the desert tested the Israelites, marked by moments of rebellion and faith, provision and judgment. At last, they stood at the border of the promised land. Moses, old and weary, gazed at his people with pride and sorrow. "I will not cross over with you," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Joshua will lead you now. Be strong and courageous." With those final words, Moses bid them farewell, and the people of Israel prepared to take possession of the land that God had promised to their ancestors. Joshua, now bearing the mantle of Moses, stood at the edge of the roaring Jordan River. "Prepare yourselves," he commanded with firm resolve. "In 3 days we will cross this river." The priests moved forward, carrying the Ark of the Covenant. As their feet touched the water, the rushing river halted, leaving a dry path before them. "Forward!" Joshua called out, and the people crossed, their hearts swelling with awe and hope. Ahead loomed their first great challenge, Jericho, a city with towering, unbreakable walls. "I have delivered Jericho into your hands," said the Lord to Joshua. "Surround the city with your warriors once a day for 6 days. On the 7th day, circle the city 7 times, and let the priests blow the trumpets." The tension was palpable. Day after day, the Israelites marched in silence, their footsteps echoing ominously. The people of Jericho watched from the walls, mocking and hurling insults. On the 7th day, as the trumpets blared, Joshua shouted, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city." With a thunderous crash, the walls of Jericho collapsed. The Israelites surged forward with cries of victory, capturing the city as God had commanded. But the conquest of the land was far from over. Fierce battles followed. At Gibeon, a coalition of kings united against Israel. Joshua, without hesitation, led his army on a daring nighttime march. The battle was fierce, and as daylight began to fade, Joshua lifted his voice to the heavens. "Sun, stand still over Gibeon. And you, moon, in the valley of Ajalon." Miraculously, the sun halted and the moon stood still, prolonging the day until Israel had fully vanquished their enemies. The annals recorded that there was never a day like it when the Lord listened to the voice of a man. The military campaign pressed forward, each victory striking fear into the hearts of the Canaanites. The city of Hazah, the mightiest of the northern kingdoms, fell in a decisive battle. "Burn the city," Joshua commanded, ensuring Hazah would never rise again to threaten Israel. After years of warfare, the land finally knew peace. Joshua, now old but still strong in spirit, gathered the people at Shechem. "Choose today whom you will serve," he proclaimed, his voice filled with a blend of authority and passion. "But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." The people, mindful of the miracles and God's guidance, responded in unison, "We will serve the Lord, for he is our God." Under Joshua's leadership, the Israelites took possession of the promised land with God's constant provision. Yet, after Joshua's death, Israel entered a new phase. Without a leader, the nation slipped into a cycle of spiritual highs and lows. In those days, there was no king in Israel. The scriptures recount, everyone did as they saw fit. The people, neglecting God's commands, turned to the idols of neighboring nations. In response, God allowed enemy nations to oppress them. In their despair, the Israelites cried out, "Let us turn back to the Lord." In His mercy, God sent judges to deliver them from their enemies. Despite this, chaos and sin continued to reign. Israel's call for a king grew louder. "We want to be like the other nations," they told the prophet Samuel. "We want a king to rule over us and lead us into battle." God granted their request, and Saul was chosen as king. At first, Saul led with courage and strength, but soon pride and disobedience clouded his judgment. In one instance, Saul offered sacrifices that only Samuel was meant to perform. "You have acted foolishly," Samuel rebuked him. "Because of this, your kingdom will not endure." The Lord had chosen a man after His own heart, and that man was David, a young shepherd from Bethlehem. When the prophet Samuel anointed him, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. Meanwhile, Saul, tormented by an evil spirit, sought relief. David, with his harp, was brought to soothe the troubled king with music that calmed his soul. David's fame spread quickly, especially after his courageous confrontation with the Philistine giant Goliath. "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that defies the armies of the living God?" David declared. Armed with only a sling and a stone, David struck Goliath down and, with the giant's own sword, cut off his head. Israel celebrated the victory, but Saul grew jealous and saw David as a threat. On multiple occasions, Saul attempted to kill David, but David always managed to escape. In the end, Saul fell in battle against the Philistines, and fatally wounded, he took his own life by falling on his sword. Recognizing the will of God, the people declared, "David, son of Jesse, shall reign." As king, David united the tribes of Israel and conquered Jerusalem, establishing it as his capital. He was a courageous and just king, but he was not without fault. In a moment of weakness, David saw Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah, and desired her. "Bring her to me," he ordered. Their affair led to the tragic murder of Uriah. The prophet Nathan confronted David, saying, "You are the man, broken and repentant." David cried out, "I have sinned against the Lord." Despite his sin, God's promise to David remained steadfast. "Your house and your kingdom will endure forever." David ruled for 40 years, and as his life drew to a close, he instructed his son Solomon, "Be strong and be a man. Obey the decrees of the Lord." Solomon, renowned for his wisdom, began his reign by uniting the nation. Thank you for watching Daily Logos. We inspiring faith and impacting change.